And we are live. Welcome to Olivia's Stories, ladies and gentlemen. Have you ever felt the urge to do something that was always on your mind and let loose? Well, letting yourself go, and you're letting your mind take control without discipline, and do what you've always wanted to do. Well, I had thought I was making myself feel alive again. I wanted to have that feeling that everyone has, a feeling of being free again. I wanted to remind myself that you can also let loose or have fun while you are married. I mean, because most people nowadays, especially women, no longer be themselves when they get married. Some lose themselves to a point that they make marriages look like it's a union to someone's true self. Some end up regretting ever getting married because they would no longer be allowed to do things that had made them happy. They become people they are not, which kills most of our married sisters. It does not feel free when you get married. This took a lot of bravery to share, so I only accept advice and not judgments. I, female, 28, am a happily married woman, married to Simon Goldman, male, 45. We live in a golf country estate that my husband owns. He is a golfer. He is also a real estate investor, and that's how we met. He was purchasing one of my father's buildings, and I was in my father's office when he arrived. It's actually crazy that my father is the one who introduced him to me. Well, I guess I wasn't daddy little girl anymore. I felt like he wanted to get rid of me. We started going out on dates. He was charming and handsome. I also figured out that my father and his father were friends and also have a joint company that was established before I was born. After years of dating, we decided to tie the knot. I was the happiest woman ever. Months went by and I was starting to feel a little bored, especially when my husband is always away on his golf trips, his part of the Golf Nation tournament. I always get tempted to go out clubbing and doing something crazy and let loose just a bit before I reach my 30s, but I always contain myself and not go out at all. I would discipline myself. My temptation ends being a thought. But there was a time when my husband left for a golfing trip. I could resist the urge of going out with my friends from college. I saw that as the perfect opportunity to break free from the monotony of my married life and have a little fun. So I started by cleaning the house and doing some much-needed grocery shopping. But as the day went on, I found myself feeling more and more restless. So I called my girls and asked if their offer of going out was still standing, which they confirmed then. We went to a club a few hours away from our city. It was supposed to be a little girls' night, but things went crazy and wild. We had a couple of drinks, and a couple of guys came to us that when things got hectic. One of the guys approached me and started giving me compliments. He was very charming and a bit handsome, younger than me, probably 25. One of my friends said, "Let's move the party elsewhere." How I wish she didn't say, but I couldn't predict what was about to happen. We went to the Four Seasons Hotel and booked a presidential suite so we can have all the fun without noise complaints, since everything is soundproof. As we were there drinking with the guys, I started to notice that there's 4 of us, and 4 of them, everyone had a partner. I started feeling a little uneasy, as I was the only one married amongst my friends, and they were so chilled, I won't lie, those guys were funny. The guy who was giving me a compliment came to me as I was gazing at the view outside. He introduced himself as Harold Thomas. He had a way of making me feel comfortable. Well, this is when I realized I needed to loosen myself a bit, as I was feeling a bit of guilt. We started to talk about life and conspiracies, and we realized we had something in common, and drinks kept on coming. The music kept on playing, and our conversation kept getting deeper. And I found myself drawn to his charming smile and kind eyes. We fell asleep on the couch cuddling each, and I was grateful that nothing happened to us. At first, I felt a mixture of guilt and excitement that nothing had happened, and I had an opportunity to let loose. I had never done anything like that before, and I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive myself, but nothing happened right. So why feel guilty when nothing has happened? So as the day went on, I found myself losing myself in the moment, and the guilt began to fade away. Our trip came to an end, and I knew that I had to go back to my boring house, plus my husband was coming back, so I had to go. When I got home, I had found my husband already back, which was a shock to me, because I didn't expect him to be back earlier since I had also tried to be back earlier than him. Well, I guess he had beat the traffic. He asked where I was coming from, so I told him that I had gone to a night away with the girls. But I left the guy's part aside because if I had mentioned it, hell would have broken loose. The next day, as I was going through the pictures that we had taken during the trip, One of the girls had taken them and put them on Instagram. One picture caught my attention. It was a picture of me and the Harold guy, and it looked too intimate and cozy. I told Miranda, my friend, to take it down because if Simon or any of our relatives were to see that picture, a lot would be ruined. Luckily, she listened and took it out, which was a huge relief. Sometimes my husband and I would spend our weekends together, but it wasn't fun because he would always watch golf games, and I would be sitting with him reading a book, which was purely boring for me. My mind was thinking about the trip that me and the girls had. I had been feeling neglected by my husband for quite some time, even if he was around. He was always busy with work, and his golfing games never seemed to have time for me. I felt like I was just a mere obligation to him, rather than a beloved partner. I won't lie and say the girls' night was boring because it wasn't. It was actually full of life and fun. I enjoyed every moment of it, and I wished I could turn back the hands of time and go back to that night. Months passed. My husband had been too occupied with work and his golfing games. To tell the truth, golf really bores me. There is actually no fun in it. It shows that it's a game for rich people. So one day, a guy from the trip texted me on Instagram. I was so shocked about why he would send me a text on my Instagram. But I didn't ask him anything. I just replied to his messages, which were actually a very good distraction because I was somehow bored at home. So he had asked me to accompany him to his friend's party. I hesitated at first because I didn't know what I would tell my husband. But God came through for me, and I really needed to get some air and let loose a little. I had been cooped up in the house for way too long. The party was going to be on the following day, and my husband had told me that we won't be spending our weekend together because he was going on a golfing trip with his buddies. He even asked if I didn't want to join him on his trip, and I assured him that I would be fine in the house so he can go alone, knowing very well that I had declined his offer for a much better and funnier offer than his. So, when my husband left for his annual golfing trip with his buddies, he gave me a peck on the cheek and told me to have a great weekend. I should take care of myself, and he would see me when he came back. God knows how much I wanted him to leave already, so I would get ready for the day ahead. So I smiled and nodded, but as soon as the door closed behind him, I let out a sigh of relief. I had been itching to let loose and have some fun, but I didn't want to do anything that would jeopardize our marriage. So that weekend was a great opportunity for me to let loose a little. As soon as my husband was gone, I decided to take advantage of the situation. I put on my favorite dress, did my hair and makeup, and waited for Harold to come and fetch me because that was the plan. When we got there, I felt the vibe already. There were so many people. I guess it was friends and maybe colleagues. I spotted his friends that I had met during that girls' night. They were with their partners who were very much friendly and full of fun. The music was blasting, everyone was having their good time, minding their own business, and that was what I really needed. It felt so liberating to be able to be myself without worrying about what my husband would think. The next day, I woke up feeling a bit hungover and regretful. I had a bit too much to drink the night before, and I was worried that my husband would notice when he got back. But as I looked in the mirror, I saw a confident and carefree version of myself staring back. I realized that I didn't need to be perfect all the time, and that it was okay to let loose and have fun. Over the next few days, I continued to explore my newfound freedom whenever my husband was either at work or went golfing. I continued chatting and going out with Harold. He made me feel so much alive, as he also introduced me to new clubs around New Jersey. I knew from there that I had found my real self. I had finally found the person I had always wanted to be. Yes, my friends and I would go out, but they respected my husband, so they didn't want to be on his bad books. My friends treat Simon like he was a god or something. Sometimes I would think they were fooling him or me to think that they respected my marriage. I once told my husband that we should sometimes go out as a couple and have fun, just to let loose and find our groove back, because before we got married, we would go out maybe 2 weekends a month, then we would come back and focus on our jobs. But when we got married, he changed to be the person I didn't know and didn't like, because he was boring. He was all about golfing, even if we were spending time together. He would talk about his golfing games and his buddies. Harold, on the other hand, was unleashing the person that I was. He was so wild to a point that he would sometimes call me and say, "Let's go out." Or he was at the gate. He was waiting for me so we could go out when my husband was even around. So I would have to turn him down, When he did that, once I understood and told him to call in advance before driving all the way to where I was staying, even when my husband was in the house. I had set boundaries earlier, but the guy continued doing things his way. I even told him that I was going to cut off the friendship we had if he continued doing what he was doing. He was acting like a crazy, obsessed, and possessed person, and I couldn't let him ruin my marriage. As time passed, Simon had started going out a lot, spending less time with me. I also spent a lot of time with Harold. What I loved about him was that he was so adventurous, full of life. I would say he was an extrovert. I always enjoyed spending time with him because, as much as he was an outgoing person, he knew what he wanted. He was working as an IT technician, well, more like he was working for himself. The more I was hanging out with Harold, the more I got to know him on a much deeper level, and I found out that we actually had a lot in common. Our energies clicked, you know. With Simon, it was always about his work and golfing. Sometimes I would feel regretful on why I got married to him, but remember that my dad actually introduced me to him. I had met Simon at my father's office. We talked here and there, but to tell the truth, my father kept pressuring me into spending more time with Simon. So I did as told, and we got along very well. So the more I learned about him, his gentleness, care, and passion to be the best golfer and get to be on Tiger Woods' level, drew me more to him. Since I was an interior designer, our jobs clicked, you know? Then I fell in love with him. I don't know how, but I found myself head over heels with him. We got married. Our families were happy for us. Well, more like our fathers were happy. We were also happy because we had chemistry, a deeper one. His golfing games would be in different places, so I would sometimes go with him, just to give him some support and cheer on him. But as time went by, I realized that golf games were actually not my cup of tea. It was not the kind of game that I would give myself time to watch and enjoy. I just didn't understand it because my father would also go out to play golf with his associates, but it wasn't the sport he would focus on and want to be the best in it. I believed that golfing was for business people discussing business matters while passing time by playing golf. But to Simon, it was a hobby, a career, and something he loved. So you see why Simon and I didn't work out. But on Harold's side, he understood me and what I wanted. He knew exactly what my soul needed, and it lacked some fun and life, and he gave me what I needed. My friends started complaining about the way I was spending more time with Harold and would ask if I was sleeping with him, which came as a shock because I never thought they would think so low about me, that they would actually think that I would cheat on Simon. Yes, I was spending a lot of time with Harold, but I loved Simon and I respected our marriage so much. One happy morning, well, I woke up happy and in a great mood that weekend. Simon and I had a very steamy and loving, intimate moment the previous night. We had a lot of lovemaking. So I decided to wake up early to prepare a nice breakfast for my husband so we would get ready for the day, as we had planned to go out together to pamper ourselves and try to bring back the spark that we once had before we got married. I had planned everything, you know. I was so happy that I was going to spend time with my husband after a long time of him always going out. No. So that morning, he came down the stairs wearing his golfing clothes and came down with his kit. I didn't understand why he was wearing that, so I asked why he was wearing his golfing clothes while we had plans for the day. He just gave me a very lousy excuse and told me that his golf buddies had texted him and told him about the game that was taking place on the very same day that was supposed to be our day. My mood just instantly went down the drain. I was so angry at him, but I was also angry at myself for thinking that Simon was actually going to choose me for one, and not his golfing games or his buddies. I mean, why would someone promise to spend time with you and even reassure you that the day was only for us, and we were going to switch off our phone so that we would not get any disturbances? But his big head switched on his phone and got his buddy's message about a certain game that was taking place just when we had planned something else. I just didn't say anything. I was so heartbroken and shattered because it was obvious that his friends and golfing games were much more important than spending time with his wife. I started hating his friends. I hated his love for golf because it was always finding its way to get Simon's attention and forget about me. It was like I was a non-factor to him. I was not important at all, and that really crushed me to a point that I decided to just do me and do what made me happy. That I drank myself to sleep because Harold was also busy with his own things, so I just closed myself indoors and drank my sorrows away. I stopped going to work because of the tension that was in the house. I was taking it with me to work to a point that I wouldn't focus on some details and end up making mistakes. I lost 2 clients that had wanted to renovate their house inside, and I did the exact opposite of what they had wanted and ordered. I was under a lot of pressure. I was still angry at Simon, as much as he had tried to apologize, but I didn't buy his lame apology, so we lived as housemates. How can a person apologize for doing you wrong or for not keeping their promise that they had made to you, but still not change the way they act? We say actions speak louder than words, but with Simon it was more like words spoke louder than his acts, because his actions were way too opposite than what he was saying about making it up to me for ditching me at the last minute. I hate people who make promises, then end up doing a completely different thing and not keeping their promises. Pity, I couldn't even cry to my father or my mother because they had high hopes for my marriage with Simon, and they had trusted Simon a lot, to a point that if I was to tell them what was going on in my marriage, they would disagree with me and paint him as a saint. Weeks passed. I had gone back to my old self. I was going out a lot and having fun. It was useless of me to keep believing and hoping that Simon was going to change, because he was a naturally boring and serious person. The only time we would go out is when we go with his friends and their partners, or I would drag him to go out with me on my birthdays. He was too focused on his work and his golfing and never his wife. So I would go out to different clubs every day since I had taken some time off at work to recover from what was going on. As I was going out, Simon asked to speak with me about my sudden behavior. He told me that he didn't know that I was a wild person and I was hanging out with bad boys. He started shouting at me, but I still continued going out, especially with Harold, despite his disapproval. But as I was having more fun and letting loose, Harold asked me to accompany him to another party at his friend's house, so I agreed with him, then we went. As we arrived, the party was lit. He introduced me to his other friends that I didn't know, and they were so much fun and full of life, so we danced till we dropped. Later on, when I felt tired, I told Harold that I was tired. Luckily, on that weekend, Simon had gone to France for his golfing trip with his buddies, so he wouldn't see that I had gone out. Anyway, Harold took me to this room, which I think was a guest room, mind you, that time I was sloshed. I had drank a lot and danced a lot, but I still remembered what had happened that night. I remember Harold saying something to me as we reached the bedroom. I didn't remember the exact words he was saying because we were both out of it. So he said what he said. All I remember him saying was that he had always had a love crush on me and he wished to kiss me. My drunk mind didn't even think of the consequences and outcomes of my actions, so I kissed Harold. Well, more like he kissed me, and I actually enjoyed it. As we continued kissing, things escalated to another level, to a point that I found myself lost in the moment. I slept with him, and I saw that in the morning when I woke up at him cuddling me like I was his teddy bear. Even my Nana confirmed that I had committed adultery and went against my wedding vows. That morning, I woke up feeling guilty and confused. I had cheated on my husband, something I never thought I would do. I didn't know if I could forgive myself, let alone my husband, if he were to find out. Regret came to me like a flood. I regretted even agreeing to come to the party with Harold. I was scared that if Simon was to find out, a lot would be ruined and my marriage would be in jeopardy. I loved my husband, and I didn't want to lose him over some fun and letting loose that I had needed. Well, I had thought I needed. Days later, Harold texted me and asked to meet up so we could talk about ourselves. I completely and bluntly refused to see him. I wanted nothing to do with him. I hated myself for what I had done to Simon and our marriage, but I hated Harold more. It was more like he had taken advantage of my intoxicated and vulnerable self. So when I declined his request for a meeting, he started calling me names and swearing at me. He even called me a harlot and threatened to leak our sex tape on social media so that I would see what my husband and my family would say. I continued declining his request and thought the crazy man was actually joking. But I believed him when he sent me the video of us enjoying the intimate moment at his friend's house. When I saw the video, I started panicking and somehow agreed to meet with him because I had no choice. If the lunatic called Harold were to leak the video, my reputation, my marriage, my job, and everything would go down the drain. It would get destroyed, not to mention how disappointed my family, especially my parents, would be. I had messed it up, and I had no one to blame but myself, and only myself. It was not like he had forced himself on me. We were both intoxicated, and I slept with him willingly. I was scared. I won't lie. Months later, Simon had gone to another golfing trip, and the Harold guy was still blackmailing me into meeting with him, or he would release the disgusting and humiliating video. I knew I had to find a way to deal with the issue that I was facing. So as the days went by, Simon was still not back. I started to miss my husband. I missed the way he made me laugh, the way he held my hand, and the way he always knew how to make me feel better. I realized that I didn't need to let loose and have fun at the expense of my relationship. But I did anyway, and there is no way to undo it. When my husband finally returned from his trip, I was nervous about how he would react to my newfound independence. I knew I had done him wrong, but I had to come clean to him and tell him what had been happening, but I would leave the intimate moment that I had with Harold on the side. And I won't even mention that I was spending time with him because he warned me to stop going out with Harold, the time he found out that I was going to clubs with him. So I told him what I thought he wanted to hear and told him my desires of letting loose and exploring new places. I had thought he was going to act irrational or angry because I knew my husband. He always wanted perfection. And what I told him was not what he liked, but to my surprise, he was happy to see me and embrace the changes he saw in me. He told me that he had missed me too, and that he was proud of me for being true to myself. I was so relieved that he was not angry or anything, but he understood my concerns and desires. The way he responded made me fall much harder for him and regret ever allowing myself to go out with Harold. From that day on, our relationship was different. We were both more open and honest with each other, and we made an effort to prioritize our relationship and have more fun together. I learned that it was okay to let loose and be myself, but that it was also important to respect and prioritize my relationship. So from there, Simon started changing for the better. I was happy, we were happy, and everyone was happy. We had even decided to attend couples therapy because we thought our issues were not only the ones we saw on the outside, but they were inside our heart and soul. So as we were attending a couples therapy sessions, I was glad that Simon finally realized that he also had an impact on what had been going on and why I somehow found myself letting loose. He realized that he had been so caught up in his career and golfing to a point that he had neglected his wife. I was really happy with the progress of our marriage, and the therapy session did help a lot, though I still hadn't come clean about what had happened between me and Harold. While on the other hand, Harold continued threatening me and my marriage. But I would tell myself that he was just a dog that only barks but cannot bite. About 2 months later, my relationship with my husband was on another glorious level. I had also started attending his golf trips also, so that when he was done playing, we would then go out and have fun and let loose with him. It's great fun to let loose with your partner because you get to do anything that makes the two of you happy and satisfied. I realized that if I had spoken out earlier or even included the parents, what happened between me and Harold wouldn't have happened. But we can't change the past, right? Time passed, well, sunny and good morning. I woke up early to prepare for the family gathering that was going to be in our house. It was like a tradition that we usually do twice a year, in different households, so that day it is going to be in our house. My husband also woke up in a very jolly mood. He helped me prepare and set everything. We had our breakfast over silly and light conversation before we went to take a bath together. I loved those moments. We made a lot of lovemaking and we were in a very good space. I loved it, and it was really refreshing, not knowing what would happen later on. So the families came to both mine and Simon's. I was really happy and surprised that even the relatives that we had last seen a long time ago were actually present. I thought it was a blessed and best day until things went downhill as we were all chilling and laughing. I had even forgotten about Harold, but he had to avail himself in a most criminating and humiliating way. I would never forgive myself or Harold for ruining my life and my marriage. So as we were having a good time playing board games with the families, Simon came to the living room looking like he was ready to kill. His face and body language was full of rage. I couldn't even think that he might have found out about my abomination. So he looked at me with eyes full of rage, hurt, and disappointment. He asked to speak with me on the side. Without thinking about what would have made him so angry, I followed him to our bedroom. When we got there, he threw a phone at me. I got confused about why he would throw a phone at me, so I looked at him hoping to get the answer I had been asking myself. Instead, he told me to press play on the video that was posted on Twitter. so I did as told without thinking again because I wanted to see what had made my husband angry. When I pressed play, I got the shock of my life. Harold had posted a video of him and me making out at his friend's house. Worst part, the video was even trending. I was trembling and shaking. I was lost for words. I couldn't even utter the apology because I didn't know what was there to apologize for. As I looked at the comments, someone had posted a picture that was taken by Miranda, my friend, on a girls' night out, when and where I first met with Harold, plus the picture of me sleeping with Harold in that hotel room that we had gone to. I knew there and then that my marriage was completely over and dusted, and there was nothing I would do or say that would make it survive. I knew that the picture that was posted on the comment section was posted by someone who had taken them, and that would be only one person. My so-called friend Miranda, plus she was the only one who had a problem with me hanging out a lot with Harold. I tried explaining what had happened, but Simon didn't want to hear anything, the way he was furious. I knew that if he was an aggressive person, he would have murdered me on the spot. As I was rambling, trying to apologize and explain, he dropped a very huge and unexpected slap on my face. I got so shocked and I went to the living room, trying to run away from the furious Simon. But when I got there, the first eyes I saw that would haunt me forever were my mom's and my mother-in-law's eyes. They were looking at me like I was the most disgusting thing. My father was more disappointed than angry. Simon came down the stairs with my luggage and told my parents that he didn't want me in his house anymore, and I should expect divorce papers soon. My mother just said she didn't want a witch in her house because I would influence my young siblings to perform abominations and humiliate the family name like I did. Her words broke my heart, but I couldn't put blame on anyone because I had brought shame and humiliation upon myself. Months passed. I had been drowning myself in alcohol because of the depressing stage I was in. I had lost my husband, my family, my friends, my image and reputation was tainted. I would always drink and cry myself to sleep every day, regretting everything that I had done. I would question myself and ask where I had gone wrong and what wrong did I do besides sleeping with Harold. My only fault was allowing Harold to manipulate me and lead me to bed with him, only for him to humiliate me like that because he had started being obsessive over me, and I didn't allow him. While on the other side, the person I had called a friend and thought she had my back no matter what had turned on me and ganged up with my enemies. But I couldn't blame any of them because at the end of the day, I was the one who was married, and I was the one who should have made sure that I didn't do anything to taint my image or destroy my marriage. But I did the complete opposite, all in the name of I wanted to feel free and let loose. There was no time to cry over a spilled milk anymore, so I had to try to get up, dust myself off, and move on. As much as it was not going to bring back what I had lost, but I had to bring back myself. So I attended AA meetings because of the alcohol abuse, while talking to my therapist about what was happening, and she helped me a lot in picking up the pieces that were scattered in my life. About a couple of months later, I was back on my feet again. I continued with what I loved doing, which was exploring new places and focusing on my job as an interior designer. The only difference was that I was no longer working for someone else's company but myself. I knew there and then that happiness is found within yourself, and you create your own happiness without going out and doing things that you would regret later. I also learned that everyone was born alone, so you shouldn't try and find happiness or validation elsewhere. You only have yourself in this world and no one else. But I learned that the hard way, but I'm grateful for the lessons I have learned. This took a lot for me to share. I am not proud of it, but I am proud of the woman I had become. Please advise me on how I should have tried to avoid everything from happening and how to deal with temptations when they come. No judgments, please, only guides and advice.